Gwen, and welcome to our Starlink show.
I'm Kelly, and that's Jason Adkins, our guest.
Yeah, he's our special guest tonight, and we're going to pick his brain about the Yeti and the Sasquatch. We're so excited about this.
I was telling Kellyanne earlier. Oh, and it was so funny, Gwen. I didn't get to send it to you, but like 5 minutes ago, one of my friends on Facebook, who is totally not into any of this, posted this Facebook thing that says, and it said Sasquatch in really big letters, and it was like how to pronounce Sasquatch. I was like, look at that. Is that a coincidence?
Oh.
No, I mean, we know there's no such thing as coincidence. But it was a nice little, you got this, right? Like a nice little kind of a sign.
Yes, it was a sign, definitely. So
synchronicity.
We took some questions from our Facebook group, and we're going to ask those to you and see what happens. And are you bringing in your
yeah, Harry.
And if you want to start out, you go right ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I will say, I did not look at the questions.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to have
influence.
I didn't want to pre-plan, right? Like I didn't want to pre-plan. So like I think I saw like one, and then I avoided. I was like, no, I'm not gonna watch these. I'm not gonna look at these. But over like the last 4 days, Harry. Okay, I know Harry, right? Harry and the Hendersons. That's why I named him that.
Tell us who Harry is.
All right. So I have a guide named Harry, who I named him Harry, right? Because they don't care what we call him as long as we call him. So I met Harry like around 2 years and a half ago, 2 years, and I had no idea. And a friend of mine who is very connected, she was doing a live on Facebook, and I was asking questions, and she said, "Oh, you have a Sasquatch," and I was like, "What? Is that possible? You know, like, is that possible? Can that okay?" And I was like, "Okay." And then over, I guess, the last year and a half, he pops in randomly. I know he's always there, but he pops in when I think about him. But over the last 4 days, over like the last 4 days, because I knew this was coming up, he's been coming in and just been like talking, like, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, I feel like he's been answering the questions that I haven't seen.
That'll be
right?
Interesting to see.
And I feel like he's also kind of expanded on some other stuff. I do kind of want to just give a disclaimer and say that he is not spirit, right? Like he is a currently incarnated person, right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't know the answers to the universe, just like we don't necessarily know the answers to the universe. And I feel like he'll go into more detail. Like, yes, he's more connected, but he's still an incarnate being.
Yes.
He's not, right? Like, so he's not God. I mean, we're all God, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he's not in a spirit form to where he has access to, all of these answers.
Yes, I get it. It's the same thing as like it's the same thing as like ET or
family. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So he can answer questions. He is more than happy to answer questions that he knows the answer to. If he does not know the answer to it, then he, unfortunately, for the person that asked the question, he's going to have to say, "I'm sorry, I don't know, but I don't want to bullshit and make something up."
No.
And he's not going to do that either.
Yeah.
But he does remind me of Harry and the Hendersons, right? Which, I mean, if you grew up in the 80s, early 90s, that's outside of the conspiracy videos. That's what we think of when we think of a Bigfoot, right? Like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, interchangeable. And his personality to me, it's very kind, it's very gentle, it's very loving, just like Harry was in the movie. And there are some differences, but the overall feel of him is very much that sweet, compassionate, I want everybody to love me, don't be afraid of me type feel. So he's super excited.
Good.
Super excited and grateful. He says, thank you.
Well,
Right?
thank you.
And it's so weird because he's pretty tall. And I feel like he's about to my ceiling, but I feel like he's compressing his energy. Does that make sense? Like to fit into the space.
That's so funny you should say that. It's coming up.
Yeah, because we're gonna bring up some.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a turn, Jason.
Okay.
It's gonna take a turn.
We should share our story with Harry. Do you remember when Jason sent him to us, the three of us? And he touched my face. And what did he do for you?
Give me a flower.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just practicing one night, and he's like, "I'm gonna send you my Sasquatch and see what happens."
It's like so weird saying that.
Ago.
I know.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like it's so weird being like, I don't know why it's weirder to me to be like, I have a Sasquatch god versus I have a galactic or an alien. We're all aliens, but but it is possible.
I don't think it's weird at all. Come on, you're talking about the Queen.
I know, right?
But we're weird, so and we love it. Okay, so let's start with some questions. There's some. One of them is, what's the difference, if there is any, in a Yeti and a Sasquatch?
So the way that he explained this to me, because this was part of our conversation that we had, was, okay, he gave me a couple of analogies or examples. He said, you have a lion and you have a tiger. They're both cats, but they're different types of cats, right?
Yeah.
He also said you have a polar bear, a brown bear, a black bear, a grizzly bear. Okay. They're all different, right? Like they're all different, but their classification is still the same. They're still Ursa, whatever.
Right.
So it's like cousins, right? Like they're related. They're related. It's almost like they're the same family, but you have mom's side of the family and you have dad's side of the family.
Right.
Just like all four examples of the bears, they're all still bears. However, they each live typically in a different region. There are physical differences. There are behavioral differences, but they're still bears, right?
Right.
So that was how he explained it to me.
That's a good one. I think we understand that. Kelly, do you have a question? Did you have them on your sheet, or do you want me to ask?
You go ahead.
All right.
That way I don't get mixed up.
So somebody else asked, are any of them in the Catskill Mountains or the Adirondack Mountains? Those are in the Northeast.
He says for him and he's called his group by a couple of different names. He's called it a tribe. He's called it a clan, and a group. So for him, no, his immediate tribe or group or clan or whatever you want to call it, are not there.
Okay.
Could there be? Yes, it's possible, especially if it's a wooded area. But
so where is Harry's group?
I feel like somebody else is going to ask this question, and it may be kind of hard to explain. So they're not permanently here.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So they do have, Harry's group at least has several different spots that they do like to go to. Washington, he said,
So like the
North,
Cascade.
yeah, like North Carolina area.
Oh.
Because I'm here in Alabama, like Alabama, parts of Georgia. But they can, I don't want to say they can shift to wherever, because there are some outside of the U.S. Like, it's not like we control or we have the surplus, right? But he says the weather for him and his group, the weather here is typically what they like, because it changes, right? Like, they can see the beauty in the change.
Okay.
Whereas like California, it typically is sunny and nice and warm all the time. Like, they do like the variances in the seasons. So it is a possibility, but even though they are of Earth, he has referred to himself as them as the children of Gaia.
Okay.
Cool.
He says we are more the children of Gaia than the human race. Look at me, my throat's getting all cloggy.
I have a question.
Okay.
It goes with that.
Yeah.
Are Yeti and Sasquatch interdimensional beings? Like, do they?
Yes.
Can they go? Okay, they can go through portals and whatnot, right?
It's not a portal. It's a shift in consciousness.
Okay.
So he is what, and he told me this. He said, you humans want to put a number on it, right? Like, we want to say we're in the 3/4D. And then we were so worried about the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th dimension. He says, if we want to label it, or if I'm going to label it for you to understand, he said, we would be between the 6 and the 7. However, they can downshift in a way to physically manifest here. He says, that's why you've never caught us. He says, you've caught us on camera, right? You've gotten us in picture. You've seen our tracks. But that's why you have never caught one of us. Because they can shift up and down. Another thing that kind of ties into that was really cool, because I was asking, I was like, what do you eat? Right? Do you eat?
Yeah.
If you're as this higher dimensional being, what do you eat? And he said that they were omnivores, right? So they do eat meat. He said, we have huge bodies. We're physical. We have to have the protein. Nuts off the ground or off the tree is not going to be enough to physically sustain us. But he did also say that there's a difference when they are here versus when they are there, and they're still on Earth. So even when they're in their 6th to 7th dimension,
what's with the berries?
On a physical, berries, apples he really likes, like fruit. He didn't really go so much into like vegetables, but like fruit. And I was like, well, what kind of meat do you eat, right? Because if you're eating protein, what kind of protein are you eating? Very bear-like, like protein, like fish. They're not scavengers in the sense of, oh, here's a dead animal. He says, we're not, that's not us. But he gave me the image of like fishing in the stream. And by fishing, I mean, they're grabbing them. I mean, they're catching them, right, with their hands. They're not using a fishing pole. But they can corral, right? Like they can get in a stream together as a pack or a group and corral to where they can kind of harvest, is the word that he wants to use.
Cool.
But they don't really eat in a physical sense when they are
in the other dimension.
Home.
Yeah.
It's when they're here and the 3D physicality sets in that they. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
Now, do they have like scouts that they send out?
Yeah, he says that everybody has a role. Everybody has a role. And another thing that I thought was cool is that, because I was like, well, is there a leader, right? In your group, is there a leader? And he was like, yes. And so I was asking, is it patriarchal? Is it matriarchal? And he says, it's not about the gender, it's about the age. So
it's like a common elder, right?
Whoever the oldest person, because the oldest person has more experience, they have more knowledge, and their role is, they're not into the whole, their role is not to go out and be physical, their role is to educate. So whether the current oldest member of his pack or group is a male or female, because they do have male and female gender, whoever the oldest is typically is the one who is not necessarily the leader, but like you said, like the shaman, like they would be the chief, so to speak.
So
I thought that was interesting.
Do they have families or children?
Yes.
Or are they loners?
Very family, at least with him. And I think so. This may be another difference between the Yeti and the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot. For him, his group is very family. It's all family, right? Like it's all his family. That being what we would say aunts, uncles, cousins, but they're all related. Now that I'm asking the question, well, how do you breed without having abnormal, like genetic stuff happen if it's all family? He said, well, new people can enter because they do commingle. So it's like, imagine that you just live on like a 5-acre farm with your family, but there's another family down the road that also lives on a 5-acre farm. You do cross paths, right? But yeah, typically the group will stay together. And I'm trying to ask, how many does he have? So it seems like there's like 12 right now, 12 individuals right now in his group. But I thought this was cool too. When he said this, told me this the other day. When the female is pregnant or has just given birth, raising kids, that is her primary job. Like she no longer participates in the hunting and gathering aspect of it. Like her role is to, not that the men don't. Also,
it's very native.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, very.
Well, he did say that they had connections with, like in the past, before the Europeans, right, got here, way in the past, that there were interactions.
Yes.
But he says that they called us something different.
So did they interact with humans? Like,
yeah, with some of them. For the ones that respected.
Is there hybrids then of human?
No.
Sasquatch, all that? No. Okay.
He said the closest thing that you would come to a hybrid, which it wasn't a hybrid, but the closest you would come to that would be like a caveman.
Okay.
Right? Like.
Yeah. So another question was, would they like to share any ways we can use them in healing sessions?
He can only speak for himself. But he's like, just set the intention. It's no different than any other energy that you would want to contact. Set the intention and be open to it. Because they do a lot of, they don't necessarily do like the energy healing. Theirs would be more, if something happened, and this was kind of weird. Not weird, but it's kind of cool. He says, if something happens to them here and in our dimension, they can always shift back up, right?
Yeah.
But if for whatever, let's say that I'm unconscious and I can't shift, right? He says that we can sometimes take them with us, but they will do like plant medicine
Again, native stuff.
Pulse. What do they call it? What do they call those things? Like poultices or?
Yeah, poultice.
Yeah.
Tinctures.
That was cool. I didn't know that. He hadn't said that to me before.
So do they have a favorite place on Earth that they like to frequent?
I'm not trying to ask. I'm like, can you tell me the name of it? He's given me a picture. And he's shown me this before. So so you have these woods, right? But then these woods open up to this field. And it's a pretty big opening of this field to where it's like kind of tall, like summer grass. It's green. But then I can still see the ring of trees like in the distance to where like this is an opening amongst the woods where there's a stream of water that runs through it. Because I asked him, I said, do you smell? You know, like, I mean, we do sometimes. Like if we don't bathe, you know, I'm like, do you bathe? Basically, I'm sorry, I'm not saying you stink, but like, do you bathe? And he was like, yes. He's like, we groom ourselves. He said that they can't really swim. Like they're not swimmers, but they do wade in the water, and they will bathe, not like bathe like we do, but they groom themselves. But he says, yes, we do have an odor, just like you have an odor, right? Like if you don't bathe. But you know, some people call them skunk apes. He's like, it's not that bad. He's like, it's not that bad. But to them, they don't.
Okay.
Like their sense of smell is different than ours. And like, that's how pheromones, right? Like that's how they can attract, or they can show an interest.
Yeah.
Like a romantic interest.
So do they interact with any other species closely? Like,
I feel like he wants you to clarify the question. He will say, as far the species of your 3D plane.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And on a broader spectrum.
Yeah.
So he does say, like, on the physical, your plane, yes, like, you know, in passing, just like any other animal in the wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he did, so how we think of like fairies being here and then not here and then not there, he said it's very similar. But do they run in the field with unicorns? No. He has a fascination with birds, because of that. I didn't know that either. Because of the freedom that they have, because they can navigate. He kept wanting to say like Mother Earth, Father Sky type thing, but because they've broken free. Like they're the freest animal. Like they have the freedom to go wherever they want, whenever they want, without the what word is that? Without the
restriction.
Yeah, the restriction of walking.
Yeah. So how do they view humans? Like, do they want to help us? Do they want us to help them at all with anything?
He says, no offense, but we do not need your help. Right? Like,
right.
We do not need your help.
Well, we probably need your help.
He says that, yeah. And he's not judging in any way.
No.
He says that there is a lot. He told me this the other day. There's a lot that humanity as a species could learn from us.
Yeah.
But the perception that most have of us is that of a wild animal. He says, we are all animals. The human race is an animal. But he says, we have compassion. We care for the planet, right?
Yeah.
We don't, he says, no, we can and we will defend ourselves if needed, but that typically is, that's not our way. Like the act of violence is not their way, but sometimes outside circumstances, when outside circumstances force two different parties together and they can't in the moment figure out how to resolve, that they will, if they feel threatened, right? Like, and you hear stories like that, like people that are going out hunting, which he laughs at. He thinks it's funny.
Or camping.
That people go out and hunt them, like to actually like
look for them.
Look like, and not just look in observation, but look to prove something by injuring or hurting one of us. He says, yes, we will defend ourselves. He said, especially if there are young ones with us, right? Like if there are what we would call kids with them, or if there are what you would call elderly, those that are not able to defend for themselves or fend for themselves. He says, we will defend ourselves. But he says, we have never attacked. We have scared. Like we have bent trees. We have they're strong. Like we have snapped trees. We have like roared. Roar is not the right word, but like we have vocalized, right? And what he says that they'll do is because he said this very rarely is it just one, right? Even when they're here. But what they'll do is they'll circle, right? Like, so they'll circle, and then one will call over here, one will call over here, one will call over here, to where the hunter, this is so fascinating. The hunter is now distracted and doesn't know where it's coming from. And he always says he, like it's a man, like it's never a woman out in the woods hunting for Sasquatch, right? With the intent to hurt or harm. But he says they always think that it's just one of us, and then they find out that there are many of us, and they scare them off.
Good.
That's good.
I think that's fun.
Yeah. But he does say that, and he can say, like, in general, as a species or a race, they are open to communication. You do not have to have the spirit contract, right? The soul contract that I have with him, as him being one of my guides, to interact.
Yeah.
It's all about the intent.
So somebody asked if there's ever going to be a time when they reveal themselves, but I'm probably thinking.
No, he says we have.
Yeah.
We have revealed ourselves.
I think us humans are just still afraid yet.
Well, yeah, and he says it's no different than, not that he's not saying that he interacts with galactic beings or star beings. That's not what he's saying. He is aware of. They don't really interact because they're not. I mean, we all are, but he's like, we're not aliens, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But they will. Stop it! Sorry, my cats. My cats are fighting. Stop it. Be sweet to each other. They, as a species, are open to communicating with those that are ready or wanting to communicate.
Good. Cool.
Yeah.
So Kelly, maybe you want to bring up our little adventure the other day.
Oh my.
Where we took a visit.
This was with the Yeti, and they kind of took us somewhere in the Himalayas.
Okay.
And it was like a Yeti dimension. Strange, right? In the side of a mountain.
Okay.
And we went into this mountain, and it went from snowy Himalayas to fully spring.
Right.
And this is the crazy part. So they showed us that Yetis have some kind of magic. They do like a heart
to heart connection, like energy.
Yeah. And it's like, it's almost like you said with the Sasquatch, like they all have different roles. But as we were speaking to like an elder, it's almost in a way like shamanic, and a hint of like magic. I don't know. It's very strange.
The tree.
Yeah. I saw your question. I think you posted it where you were asked, or you asked me. No, you asked me the other day, do they have magic?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking about the heart to heart, he's referring to that as telepathy.
Okay.
So he says, yes, we are. We are telepathic with each other. He says we are vocal, like we have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they're not speaking English, but I mean they have a voice, but they are amongst themselves. I mean, he's doing it with me right now, right? Like, they are highly telepathic. He says we do not have magic in the sense of what the human race deems as magic. He says, however, we do have telepathy. We are able to shift dimensions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for us, that would seem like magic.
Mm-hmm.
But magic in the sense of casting a spell.
No.
Like they don't do that.
It's not.
It's not what we
like that. It's almost like you have the ability to like touch a heart space, and it expands or opens or it does something.
Right. He says for him, that would be the equivalent of him sharing his pure energy with someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if let's say that I'm a little blocked or whatever the case may be, he can step forth, and if I'm open, which obviously you and Gwen were very open to it, right? Because you're letting them just kind of take you on this tour. If I'm open to not judging the moment, and I'm aware of what's going on with me physically, then yes, I could feel the change within myself when he presents his energy to me, which can have what we would call miraculous effects, because it can change our mood, it can change our state of being, because they are of a higher dimension. It can help us raise our vibration.
Yeah.
And he's also told me that, and I don't know if this is a question, but because you brought up the Yeti being like these mountains where they're like snow-covered mountains, right?
Yeah.
All right, so like he's explained to me that just how I kind of like I was talking about the bears earlier, and like the different bears are in different areas, and how like the polar bear is white. Polar bears are in the Arctic. He says that they do have like their coloring, because he's like a redishy brown color. He's got patches of dark, but for the most part, he's like a redishy brown.
Kind of like for redwoods, just saying.
Yeah. But he said their color is camouflage in a sense, and so they do have Sasquatch that are in snow-covered mountains where it's always snow, and they typically have a lighter. If they're not like a yellow blonde color, they're white. right? Like the
Mhm.
color, it can vary. But depending on where they typically live at, whether here on our level or where they're at, because they're still on, like, again, that's because they're still on Earth, right? He says their coloring can reflect what area they typically stay at. So the white ones typically are in snow,
Yeah.
like all year round snow.
Well, I think we've gotten through all of the questions from online. Was there anything else that he would like to say or talk about? Maybe we missed, or just something he wants to tell us?
He says again, thank you, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Like I almost feel like he wants to bow, almost. Like, it's hard for me because I feel like I want to humanize him.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like I want to humanize him. I don't know. I feel like he wants to bow. He's like, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Mary.
He says, you're welcome. What else? Do you have anything else that we didn't cover? So there. So not right now. Okay. Right. I feel like you're going to see, I feel like people are going to see more evidence, right? They're going to see more evidence.
Good.
Because we're shifting, right? I mean, we're shifting, so it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
But I was asking, I was like, will there come a time to where we will be like, hey, neighbor, right? And he says it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
Now,
they said that we have a lot of work to do. I know that.
Well, I mean, we can't even get along with each other.
Right.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The same reason why, you know, our neighbors in the universe don't really want to swing by and be like, hey, because we'll bomb them. But he does say that there are more people out there that have these that realize. And like I said, I would not have. Well, I'll say that. He says no. He says you would have realized it on your own eventually. But it was nice that someone pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
I did meet. I don't know what the girl's name was. There was a girl one time on one of my lives that she had one that very prominently stepped forward, and she was like, "I love Bigfoot." And I was like, "Well, that's because you have one."
I've seen somebody who has a Yeti guide.
Yeah.
You guys know her.
I just think it's cool, and I think his thing is like, right? It's like be open to the possibility, because we're so focused on human spirit, right?
Right.
As being the only thing that can be around us.
Right.
That we are sometimes doing a disservice to ourselves by not acknowledging our galactic friends and family.
Amen to that.
Our families that originate from Earth. And he says that they originate from Earth. You know, we hear the talk all the time, like how humans aren't really from Earth, right? Like we were kind of seeded. He's kind of been like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you the truth. Yeah.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
Since they are so earthbound, do they have a special connection, like with elementals?
Yeah, because they're both. No, not that they're both. They're all. That's the word. He says they're all interdimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they all originate. So how we like to say, and I don't like to say this, how we like to say we are source energy, like we're a spark of the divine, right? Like we're a piece of all that is. I mean, obviously the earth is also a spark of the divine. But he puts it in my head as if instead of being a spark of the divine, he's a spark of Gaia, right? He's a spark of the earth.
Yes.
And so that's how he labels like the elementals, the
Mhm.
fairies, the gnomes, the whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the tree spirits, the water spirits, like they're all, he calls them the children of Gaia.
And
So-
it's strange because then you have like people that have sparks of the earth, or you know, a galactic spark or whatnot, and they connect better with the things such as, you know, Sasquatch or elementals or star being.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he says we all have I cannot say that word, a familiarity.
Familiarity.
Right. With a certain energy source, right? We feel some of us may be more connected to something outside of Earth or in outer space. Some of us are very rooted in the here and the now. But he says that they are a direct descendant of the Earth's energy. The same would go along with like the Fae and the elementals.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'm like, are you married? Do you do marriage? Right? Like committed relationships.
Yeah.
He says yes and no. So he does have so you have one now, right? Okay. He does have a primary partner.
Oh, is that
however, yeah, like he has a life partner.
So like a common law marriage.
Yeah, but he says if the need arises for the group to expand, then he will step outside of, because it benefits. The same with her, right? The same with her. So if he is unable to, then she is able to step outside of their partnership, because it benefits the whole. Like it benefits their group to have numbers.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. That's awesome.
I've also asked him how old he is or what their lifespan would be. He said if you were to take essentially like our ultimate age and double, so like 200, like 200 to 300 would be like their max. They don't live thousands of years. They do live like on average about like 4 times longer than we do. But he says, think of your longest living human, right? 100, right? He said we typically are double that. We can go longer, but so 200 to 300 years old. But for them, again, that's our time, right? That's us putting a time frame on it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how old are you, right? Like, how old would you be? He's like around 230.
Ooh.
Right. He's also, because I try to get all these details. He's also between like 7 and 8 feet tall. He says, which is about the tallest that they would get.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm like, how much do you weigh? Right. Like, because he's solid. He's like, what is a ton? Like 1,000 pounds, right?
2.
Because I'm thinking in my mind, like, what does a normal bear weigh? Like, a normal bear stands up about 6 or 7 feet. They weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds.
So like a VW vest?
But he's so broad shouldered. And his arm, he tried to give me the description of, imagine like one of your gorillas, essentially, but taller and bigger, like, because I feel like his arms
His arms like taller than
are really
taller
long.
than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his
I'm
arms
about
are like
5 feet, so
the palm of his hands typically come down to about the knee area. Like they're really long. I mean, they're tall anyways. But I thought it was interesting that the hands were pretty much hairless. The feet were pretty much hairless. And then he's got hair on his face, but kind of like a gorilla, to where like around the eyes and the mouth, there's not really. He does have a beard, or what we would call like a beard, but it's just his hair. And then parts of he's got hair on his chest, but it's sparse. And then I asked, like, how do you multiply? Right? Like, and he says very similar in the way that humans do. Right? I mean, I feel like he chose my word to say it may be a little bit more animalistic. Like, it's not this sweet. He said, but it is. It serves its purpose. But it's not like this romantic, sweet, I'm making love to you. It's, okay, I'm ready. Let's, like this, and like the animal instinct part. But he's like, but we're not animals, but we are. I mean, but they are. We are. But we all are. But they are. I don't know how to describe it. Like,
I think
it makes me
it.
think of
I get
like
it.
caveman, right? Like caveman, where the primal instinct is.
I don't know why I'm thinking like tribe thing, Game of Thrones, like just
He does have. He has. His oldest is female. And it makes me feel like there are 2 younger boys of different ages. But the pregnancy period is longer.
That's a good one.
How much?
He's like up to 2 years.
Oh dear.
Wow.
To carry.
Woof.
Could you imagine?
The babies. I know, but he says the babies aren't like human babies. Like, he says our babies are capable, right? Like, I mean, yes, there's still a process of taking care of, but he's like, our babies are capable. Like, they don't come out and need 2 years worth of coddling and protecting. He was like, they come out very capable.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for her. They're so big. So in their group, their leader is a female. She would be like the grandmother to many, is what he's kind of saying. Like, they've got to be older than that, because she's older than that. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. But yeah. Is there anything else? He's like, take care of your planet.
Yes.
Take care of your planet. And I thought this was cool too. When he was talking about how they shift up, but they're still on Earth, he says, we don't have your buildings.
Okay.
Like, it's Earth as Earth was.
Okay.
Oh, I love
as
that.
was intended to be, right? Like, Earth in its natural state.
Yeah.
He says, we don't have your buildings are a construct of the 3-dimensional. And when you shift up, those constructs disappear.
Yeah.
So they don't have the limitations of, whereas like if he wanted to go to New York, well, New York's full of them for the most part,
Mhm.
cities and buildings. He says if he goes to where New York is on his earth, it's trees.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank
Okay.
you, Harry. We'll
Yeah.
have to do this again. And thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
And
Thank you.
Jason can be found in A Place to Heal on Facebook if you want.
Or Jason Adkins.
So this is really fun.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
He says thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
Bye. Thank you.